Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Happy holidays to everyone out there. If you missed all of our crab cake tours, you got to wait till January 7th. And hey, that'll be Ravens playoff time. We'll be at Lib's Grill up in Bel Air. All of it brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery, as well as Jiffy Lube Multi-Care. Jiffy Lube is powering Loop back and forth to Owings Mills and downtown for an early matchup on Saturday afternoon against Pittsburgh Steelers, and then an even earlier game in the week on Christmas next week against Houston. This guy has sort of the same schedule. Everybody, Houston, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, we're all sort of, Saturday, Christmas Day. I got to get out of bed and go to the game in Pittsburgh. Will Graves covers all things Pittsburgh sports. Poor SOB for the Associated Press. He is a Marylander who has escaped with yins and that. He's gone the opposite direction of all them down there. And it's always good to have you on, man. Happy holidays to you. Hope the family's well. Hope your health is good. Looks like the Pirates are trying to get better. We're here with the Orioles trying to figure that out. You cover it all up there. How is the state of Pittsburgh sports?
Well, the Steelers have sort of surpassed, I think, expectations that they were the last pick. Like in the preseason, odds makers had them as the least likely team to win the division, and now they are sort of still technically the most likely to win the division, although I remain skeptical. The Penguins got off to a really rough start. Looked like it was absolutely over for them. They kind of got lucky because the conference looks like it's terrible. Cap's obviously off to a very good start, even without
I don't know
Obi
what's up with that. I was shocked by
month.
that. I talked about
But like they've won. I think they're 7-2-1 in their last 10, and that's with Sid and Gino not really scoring. So that's reason for optimism that they can make the playoffs. I mean, they're not a Stanley Cup contender anymore, but I think if they could somehow rebuild while still being competitive, that would probably be a best case scenario for them. And the Pirates, like, look, it's all Skeens all the time. The number of guys in this town that have made it a point to look like Paul Skeens is like, if you're a college age guy or in your mid-20s and you're got brown hair, you have a mustache, basically, dark brown to black hair, you have a mustache in Pittsburgh right now. I mean, it is alarming the number of guys. Like the Steelers have a couple of their support staff, younger, really young guys that look like the same for Pitt, same for the Penguins, and obviously the Pirates, like half their staff's got
Hold on. Paul
mustaches.
Skeens is a mustache phenomenon in Pittsburgh.
Yes,
Y'all are
absolutely.
strange up there,
Absolutely.
and I can say that because you're not from there, so I can do that.
I mean, it's sort of, I mean, like, they sell little kits like as the season went on last year, towards the end of his last starts, you would see kids like would get the little like Groucho Marx mustaches that they would wear to the games. Like it's becoming a thing. And the thing is, look,
Well, he's got a hot
they have
girlfriend, so that works out well,
they
right? So
they have control over him for the next 3 seasons at a cheap cost. And then they have to decide. So they have to maximize their window now. They haven't really done much this offseason to kind of address their power problem, which is where they're really deficient at. But we'll see. It's nothing much has changed with Bob Nutting. They've had about 40 million in payroll walk away. Aroldis Chapman, some others, and they haven't replaced it yet. So that's a problem. At least your O's are trying to spend some, which is good. I think like that's
they
the
say
point.
they're trying to spend it. Let's see when them spend it. You know what I mean? Like
I'd be
Boros is rubbing up on Rubenstein, all nice, trying to get that 600 million for header. I mean, it's all a big game, but the other part of it is we have new ownership here, so there's no more
right,
bitching about Peter or any of
right,
that stuff. It's like, hey, what are you going to do? And so
right.
many people feel like, from a fan standpoint, from my media pass standpoint, it feels like nothing's changed. Like it's just from the broadcast standpoint, just from all of it. Like they have a new president. She's been invisible for 3 months around here, thinking she's going to sell from a desktop up at the warehouse. I don't know, man. The baseball thing here, because there is so much hope here. It's not like your place
Right.
where everybody, or like here when Peter owned it. There is real hope here, and there's hope that this guy was going to be different. I don't know. Elias is running the team kind of the same way. So for what it's worth.
Well, I mean, hopefully they spend. I mean, they've got a really good core group of players there with a window that's wide open, I think, for them to be successful. And the town is, look, I mean, we haven't talked in a while. I mean, my kid last year, like in May, was like, I owed him a mental health day for school. I was going to take him to see the Pirates play the Angels, and Trout, of course, got hurt like 3 days before. So
Well,
we ended up
is
going.
that really mental health to take your kid to a Pirates game? I mean, is that the way you would?
Well, then he goes, so like we had to cancel. Then he goes, hey, he sent me a link to Yankees Pirates or Yankees Orioles, I think, at the Yard. I think it was like maybe in the middle of May. And it was just, we just day tripped it. We just woke up early, drove down, went to the game, got nice club seats. O's won, hit like 4 or 5 homers.
See,
We
this
hung
is where
around
you
a little
call
bit.
your pal Ness and you say, "Hey Ness, I'm bringing the kid down," and I say, "Well, stop by Fadley's, get some crab cakes, my man." You know, like that. That is what I would have done for you. I would have
I want to
provided
say
that place.
we stopped at a Boyle, but it might have been in Glen Burnie, I think. I cannot remember. We had some issues getting out of town, and he was not going to I wasn't going to get home at like 2 in the morning so that he could get out of going to school the next day. So we didn't stick around too much after the game, but it was encouraging, and I imagine he will ask me the same favor, the same mental health day this
Well, if he
spring.
doesn't
So
want to see Juan Soto, if you want to see Juan Soto, you have to see the Mets.
well, and I will say this, like that might been my first time in Camden since probably 99, I think. And
Moving that wall
I
back, isn't that something?
I literally got emotional, like it was weird. Like I kind of stored all that stuff away for a really long time. And then when we were walking through the gates with him, 14, 15-year-old son,
First time
who's
at
a
Camden
baseball.
Yards for your boy?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, well,
He was a
there we
baseball
go.
player. And that was actually pretty special.
Well, you know what? I was just going to talk Steelers with you and say Merry Christmas and do all that. And
That's
um,
more happy to.
but look, I mean, you do cover all the sports there, and the baseball thing here has been on my lips more than the football thing this week because the Ravens can't win the Super Bowl this week, right? It feels like the Orioles can win the World Series in the offseason in the minds of the fans if there's some push, but the Ravens, this has been a slog for them, and as Luke and I talk about it, maybe they win the Super Bowl. Maybe they pull it out this week, go to Houston, win, host a game, win it, and then raise hell in Buffalo or Kansas City, or maybe Pittsburgh goes in and beats Buffalo and knocks them out of the way. I don't know, but this has been choppy because the Ravens were so good last year. They pissed away the championship game. The whole offseason, they lost a lot of
Right.
coaches, depth, players, pass rushers. They lost all this stuff. But they came back with Derrick Henry, and it looked like it was going to be fine. Defense isn't very good. Kicker hasn't been very good. Offensive line, and the whole notion that they've coughed up games, that they lead the world in penalties. So that's my
Right.
football team at this point.
Right.
And they're playing on Saturday night and Christmas because everybody thought they were going to the Super Bowl. They thought Houston, Kansas City, Baltimore. Well, who are we going to pair them with? I'm shocked that the Bengals weren't this pairing. And I guess the
Right.
schedule makers have all sorts of things that go into making a schedule. But it's kind of weird the Steelers were put on this schedule thinking that they were going to be a 5 or 6 win team because Russell Wilson was no good. Tomlin needed to be fired after like all of that. And as it turns out, they're in first place. And Pittsburgh was the right choice for the schedule makers without question because this rivalry's back on. It's a $300 ticket down here on Saturday. I mean, this is as big a Steelers Ravens game as we've had since Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, and Ben Roethlisberger and Hines Ward.
Well, I mean, you said the Ravens can't win the Super Bowl this week. I think the Steelers, um, to me, this is absolute. They have to find a way to win this game. I think they like the whole notion this year, starting at the end of last season, where they make the late push with Mason. They blow up the quarterback room in the offseason, all with the idea of winning a playoff game for the first time since 2016. To me, the only way they win a playoff game is if they get a game at home. The idea of them going to Baltimore in the first round or going to Houston where they have struggled when they've gone with really good teams in the last 10, 12 years, they have to win the division and they have to be home. That is to me, them going on the road, I just do not see it. And we saw what happened when they played the Eagles. I view that as a litmus test game for them. They did not look prepared. This is a big emotional game for the Steelers. I think like if you want to be a contender, like you have to beat somebody good. Now they won the first matchup with the Ravens, but I mean, like to your point, the Ravens handed them half of that game.
The Ravens have
Tucker,
handed a lot of teams games,
right?
and they always talk
Tucker,
about that. And when you look at who gets off the bus and, Roquan Smith and Marlon, we were like, we're going to kick their ass. And then next thing you know, it's 17-14 in the fourth quarter, and it hasn't been good enough. And Luke always says they play with their food.
I mean, I think so. And then when like the first game here, it was just I'm watching this game and I'm just like the Steelers did not play particularly well. They didn't score a touchdown. Okay. And, the Ravens turned it over 3 times. Tucker misses a couple of kicks that, in vintage Justin. I mean, I've seen him, in swirling 25-mile-an-hour winds drill 50-yarders here. Right. So, like, he basically, I won't say the Ravens handed them that game, but they abetted the Steelers winning that game. I think the Ravens can still go to the Super Bowl even without winning this game. However, I would say this. like the idea that Derrick Henry only got 13 touches in that first game is like insane to me. Like they didn't even let him get rolling in the
Well,
second
the
half.
issue
Like
for
that
me
is
is they look at defenses and say the Steelers are going to stop our running game because they have had their running game stopped. I mean, if you put 8, 9 guys up, you can stop it, and then you're daring Lamar to throw. And that, I mean, I've seen this for 6 years, right? Before Derrick Henry got here. Now that Derrick Henry's here, other teams are like, we got to stop him because if the Ravens start running on you, they won't stop.
right.
And
And
one,
but I don't think the
yeah.
Ravens, they didn't commit to it the first time. They didn't really commit to it.
Well, they
And,
ran the ball 3 times in the championship game last year. So Monken and Harbaugh, when they get to these big games, I
it's
mean, I hear
bizarre. I
Tony
mean, like,
Romo
now
like
look,
Harbaugh's going to the Super Bowl and all that. I'm like, I don't know, dude. He lost a lot of big games around here since Flacco left.
I
Like,
mean,
just in
if
general.
you watch where and it's weird because to the Steelers' credit against the Eagles, they did slow down Saquon a little bit. Like they did. But, I mean, Jalen Hurts, just picked them apart. I mean, just absolutely shredded them. So maybe Monken watches that video and goes, well, that's what we're going to do too. They're going to load up the box and we're just going to, I would say that the Eagles have better, out playmakers on the outside than the Ravens do. And I just think that like you be who you are. Like I think like that's the weird part. Like if you want to beat these guys, you can like the Giants like ran for 150 some yards against them. The Cowboys went over 100 yards against them. The Colts went over 100 yards against them. You can run the ball on these guys, but you've got to commit to it. If I was Monken, I would be like, we are running the ball until they prove it to us that they can stop it. That's what I would do. He should have done it the first game. They probably would have won the game. But I think it's a bigger game for the Steelers because they have to, you know, prove that they can go on the road to play a quality game. My analysis the day after the Eagles game. I got a lot of crap from Steeler fans because I said like all season the Steelers knew this stretch was coming. This 3 games in 11 days against quality playoff teams, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, and they knew it was coming and they still looked unprepared. And if you, I mean, a couple people say, well, if Najee Harris doesn't fumble the pitch in the third quarter, maybe they like, no, what they got sunned the last 10 minutes of that game. I mean, Tomlin lived in his fears, punted on 4th and 7 at midfield, down 2 touchdowns with 10 minutes left, and they never got the ball back. When is the last time the Steelers did that to to a quality team? They kind of did it to the Chargers early in the year, but like Herbert was hurt and didn't even really play the second half. So I don't that to me that doesn't even count. Like it's been, I went back and looked. I think it's been since 2020 the Steelers went and really handled a quality opponent decisively. This is a big game for them. If they win, they clinch the division, and then maybe you can rest your guys. Maybe you don't have to try to get Pickens back on the field. Who knows what TJ's
Well,
status is going
taking
to be?
Christmas Day off when everybody, you know what I'm saying? Like
Oh,
having to go and beat Kansas City on Christmas Day to keep pace with the Ravens, to do whatever you're going to do in that last game. And they'll flex all that out and do all that. But like this game, I feel the same way about the Ravens. I'm like, if the Steelers win the game, the Ravens are a playoff team and they might as well just play for where they're going to Houston or Pittsburgh, wherever
well,
they're going to go in a couple of weeks. If they win the game, it really puts extra pressure on everybody. And now Kansas City and Buffalo are close enough, so Kansas City's got to play for their lunch too. So like, Christmas
right.
Day becomes just nasty on 4 days rest with great. It's unfair. I mean, like
Correct. Right.
it's stupid that they're playing on Christmas Day. It's stupid that Yins and Not have to get out of bed, and your kid at 9:30 in the morning, you're going to leave and say, I got to go over to the island and watch football today. It's Christmas Day. I That's the league. But then on top of that, the kind of game it's going to be on short rest against the world champs, uh, you guys had the tougher schedule. I don't think there's any question about that. And as 6-point underdogs this week coming down here, 15 weeks into it, the Steelers have been the better team this year. But then I get Aaron Schatz on. He talks about DVOA and the Ravens being the
Yeah.
greatest of this and that. They're 6-point favorites. I mean, nobody thinks the Steelers are winning Saturday night except Mike Tomlin, I guess, right?
Well, I mean, I think, we were talking about this in the locker room this week that wouldn't it be something, the players hate that like the players are like, it's part of the players' fault. Like the CBA, they agreed to the CBA that's allowed the owners to sort of have free range to do whatever they want with the schedule, right? To maximize the investment, to put it on Netflix or whatever. Wouldn't it be a statement though, if let's say the Steelers win this game, they're locked into where they're at. Let's say the Ravens are locked into where they're at. The Texans have already clinched the division. The Chiefs have clinched their division. What if going into Christmas Day, instead of getting, you know, uh, Patrick Mahomes versus Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson versus I'm sorry, the kid
CJ
from Ohio
Stroud, go
State.
ahead. That's okay.
See, Stroud, you get
We
like
talk a lot. It's easy,
Carson,
and we're old. It's easy
you
to
get
forget things.
you get Carson Wentz versus, Justin or Kyle Allen, you get the back, the Texans back. You
We
get
have
all the
great Josh
backups in this
Johnson,
game.
is what we have here.
Right.
So
Yeah, you get all these backups in this game as sort of a message from the coaching staff and from the players that this was ridiculous. You shouldn't make us do this. And since we're locked into our spots, we're just going to treat this like a week 3 preseason game. Like I would almost be in favor of that because this is from a team from a league that says it cares about player safety. This is just absolutely reckless.
well, there's no question about it. Any journalist should say that. Any fan should say that. Any family member should say that. Anybody who's ever played football should say that. Will Graves is here. He says a lot of things for the Associated Press. He is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He covers all the sports up there, including Pitt and a bunch of other things as well. And we love having him on. He is a Marylander by birth, a Caps fan that we've talked about that a little bit over the course of our 15 years of doing this together. It's always a pleasure to have Will. And so for your team and Watt and health and all of that, it's uncanny that it's Christmas week here, that the Ravens are playing as an underdog at home with the 5 losses hanging on their head, but they are coming with the full complement. I mean, they are as healthy as I have ever seen this franchise in, 30 years of it being here at this point in the season. There's nobody in the trainer's room, and this franchise has been snake bitten by this for years and years and years. Harbaugh had this whack job trainer who came down and gave them all COVID for you. They finally got rid of all of that. And something has happened here with their sports science that because they put a lot of effort into it. And now they will say, we work hard at keeping our players healthy here. They're the healthiest team in the league. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and like that's part of the, I guess if you're looking for good karma, like it's not always who's the best team maybe at the end of the season, but also who's the healthiest, right? That's certainly a part of it. And the Steelers, look, they overhauled their strength staff, got rid of a guy that was Marcel, a guy who was beloved. The new staff has come in. What happens? Russell Wilson tweaks his calf, like pushing a blocking sled on literally the first day of camp and is out for 2 months. And now you've got all these soft tissue injuries with Pickens, which was very bizarre. I mean, guy who had not missed a game in his entire career until this season, until he tweaked something in post-practice Thursday a couple weeks ago. You got Deshaun Elliott in-game hamstring pull. You got Larry Ogunjobi with a groin. So the soft tissue injuries that the Steelers were so concerned about that they overhauled their training staff, they're still here anyway, right? And if you look at it, like Watt trending towards playing, but like when he doesn't play, their record when he doesn't play is 1-10 in his career. 1-10. Now, a couple of those are those like week 17, we're locked in, whatever. So okay, let's dismiss those. So that's 1-7, 1-8. They are healthy-ish, but even like Fields, he came in for one play against the Eagles, had an abdominal injury, slid and got hit a little high and tweaked and pulled something. So who knows what his availability is going to be like as a change of pace guy, which is sort of the role he's kind of moved into the last month or so. So, that being said, I mean, look, it's, the Steelers have raised expectations. They began the season with very low expectations. Those expectations have been raised. But to me, and the gap between them and the halves of the AFC is closer. But if you want to, what's that Ric Flair thing? If you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. And I mean, I think the Ravens, even though the Steelers have won 8-9 in this series, I still think the Ravens, I mean, like I was literally looking it up yesterday. The Ravens still a bigger bet to go to the Super Bowl, a bigger bet to go to the AFC Championship game than the Steelers. And I think
Well, they're a touchdown favorite to win this week. So they're supposed to win this week. And once they do that, they will then it'll deodorize all the losses if they're hosting a game, right. And they might even be hosting the Steelers, right? I mean,
right now, hosting, I mean, right, and that's the thing. I mean, I really think this is it's weird to say that the team with the better record that won the first meeting has more at stake in this one, but it feels to me like from a confident because like people's memories of like 2020 when they got off to the 11-0 start, but weren't really impressive. Like, they stumbled down the stretch and then they got housed by the Browns in the first round of the playoffs, right? I think people are going to start flashing back to that if the Steelers lose this game.
Will Graves is here from the Associated Press in Pittsburgh. We were talking all things Steelers, Ravens. Your perception of the Ravens from the outside and what they've been the last 6 years with Lamar and the championship game last year. We haven't talked in a while, maybe since last year's one of the matchups last year. I think I had you on, but watching the Ravens from the outside, it is fascinating for me, especially being thrown out of the media because I see it on NFL and Network and ESPN what the hubbub is around it, and also marketing deals that Derrick Henry gets that Lamar Jackson doesn't get, right? Like just
Right.
his star and his uniqueness and the way he plays the game. It definitely feels like it's a lot easier for Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes to be kings in the league than it is for Lamar, who's won 2 MVPs, probably
Right.
in line for a third one now, but Josh Allen's team's record is better, right? Like some of that may change down the stretch. But this perception of the Ravens and of Harbaugh and of just their talent and their ability to draft players and all of that, it hasn't, it's nice clay and it looks like it's going to be something. It has not yielded certainly the excitement in January, the Joe Flacco winning games and Ray Lewis being here. I mean, the whole franchise changed when Ray Lewis stopped dancing before the games. And I mean that like, and the knee in Wembley, but there were 20,000 Eagles fans here 2 weeks ago. There are going to be 20,000 Steelers fans in the seats on Saturday night. And they threw me out of my seat. So some Jack Wagon and a Jack Lambert jersey will be sitting in my seat on Saturday because that's the way it is, right? There's a different vibe down here for expectation, meeting those expectations. And this is supposed to be like a great operation, and it's only been so far so good. They spit this up on Saturday night somehow and have to go on the road and lose the first playoff game. I don't want to say Harbaugh's in jeopardy because Bisciotti's like a stepbrother to him. You know what I mean? Like Bisciotti
Right.
doesn't want to be firing anybody here. So DeCosta's like a son to Bisciotti. So I don't, much like the Rooney family, once you're in, you're in. They don't fire coaches. It's the same way here. But this is teetering here with Marcus Williams being paid all this money and not on the field. Ronnie Stanley's rehabilitated himself to be a serviceable tackle after he didn't make the field for 2 years. They've had some miracles here, right? Like just a lot of players have come through here that look like Linderbaum, good pick. Roquan Smith stole him at the trading deadline. Marlon Humphrey, Jack Wagon, but can play football. Oh, Kyle Hamilton, maybe the best pick they've had since Ed Reed. I mean, Kyle Hamilton's could be going to the Hall of Fame. He's great. But they got 5 losses. And if they don't beat the Steelers this week, they're probably not going to win the Super Bowl this year, too. So winning the Super Bowl for either one of these teams feels like I have to host the game January 10th at home because Buffalo and Kansas City are waiting out there, and they don't look good for either one of us. But it is this rivalry and the history and all of that that's come to this place where I haven't met a Steelers fan who think the Steelers can really win the Super Bowl, even if they win on Saturday night. I haven't met too many people think they're going to win on Saturday. And I've been watching the Ravens play and saying, I don't know, Steelers win every time they play. Tomlin loves to bring that
Right.
up with me when I see him. So why would this week be any different? And I look at TJ Watt and say, to your point, 1-10, whatever that record is, without him, great players really F up the Ravens. I mean, we saw that with the Raiders. We saw that with Myles Garrett, who wrecked the game and beat them. And then the kickers got the yips here, too. You got that going on. So
Right.
it's just been a really choppy year in a way that it wasn't supposed to be this way. We're not supposed to be playing the Steelers from behind on Christmas week, especially at the Steelers. It's supposed to be the Bengals, right? And so it's been a weird year. And this is a really important game for the franchise here. I'll say that.
Well, I mean, I think you asked the perception. I think that, the Ravens are sort of their model isn't that dissimilar to the Steelers, right? I mean, you got a lot of stability in the head coaching position. You're consistently competitive. You do draft guys and you sort of try to keep the guys that you draft. But I do agree that like there is like until Lamar has that breakthrough where he gets them to the Super Bowl, I think there's always going to be that little like, well, but to your point, I mean, they have beaten themselves more than they've been beaten. I mean, I think the Eagles kind of, pushed them around a little bit, but I mean, in the other losses, to me, they like the one here, like they just sort of found like in like the Raider game, like just sort of found ways to lose the game. The defense has gotten better the last month or so. I think Mike Tomlin talked a lot about that this week when he met with us. I don't know if but I do think like if you get into this is Lamar's seventh year, right? Sixth, seventh year as a starter, whatever it
70,
is.
yeah. He came in
Like,
18.
if you get into that and you still have not had that kind of breakthrough moment, I certainly think that things start to get a little queasy. And you're sort of like, man, is this the group that can really do it? But you're sort of in a tight spot. I mean, like the Steelers, look, this is my 14th season covering the team. I literally started after they lost to the Packers in the Super Bowl with the idea of, well, Ben's like 28 years old, 29 years old. I'm going to go to a couple of Super Bowls before he retires. And instead, they got into this cycle of good, but not great. They had Brady in the way for a while. And now the last couple of times they've been in the playoffs, they've just sort of imploded.
Well,
He
Mahomes is in the
hadn't,
way. Let make no mistake
right,
about
right.
it.
And
His high
it didn't
ankle
really have,
turn is the biggest story of the week for sure.
right, and didn't really have the firepower to kind of keep up. I mean, they look like they're more equipped, but I think it's like, but the Steelers, like in that second half of Ben's career, is like, what do? You got a Hall of Fame quarterback with a really good coach and a good, a team that's consistently competitive. What are you gonna do? You're gonna fire the coach when you guys win 10, 11, 12 games every year? Like the Ravens sort of in that same spot, but like if they can't, if they just get it to put it together for 60 minutes, I do believe like they in Buffalo to me are by far the most like well-rounded teams in the league right now as we sit here in,
I'll put
mid
the
to late
Eagles in
December.
there, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, certainly in the AFC at least, right? I mean, like they certainly when you watch them play, you're like, oh my, I mean, how many times when you like I've been to watched every Steelers game for the last 14 years. How many times this season have I been like, oof, this group has got it against a good team? Not often. So like and it's like their schedule's a schedule, but the
Well, that's
losses
a
like
reflection of the quarterbacking there the last 5 years, and even the last 5 years of Ben, he wasn't great.
right.
And that was about all the knuckleheads, running backs who won't take their money, wide
Well,
receivers who stream in the middle of naked
Well, I
shower
mean, like,
scenes.
look, George Pickens is no picnic, man. I mean, and I was there like literally a couple weeks ago. They're preparing for the rematch against the Browns, and he had gotten into it with Newsom at the end of the snow game. And then, we're asking him why, I'm like, can opponents get in your head? And he's like, no. And I'm like, why do the penalties keep coming? And he says, because I'm being targeted. And then somebody says, are you going to talk to Newsom before the game? And he goes, I don't even know who that is. Like in typical Mean Girls fashion, right? The guy, he's different than AB in the sense that there's no off the field stuff, right? There, at least not yet. He appears to be he's fine. He's not a problem away from the field, but man, he's one of those guys where like they have to decide in the offseason if they're going to pay him or not, right? Because he's in his walk year next year because he
Well,
was
we
a
have
second round
Deontay
pick.
Johnson here, and you can have him. He
How,
decided
yeah,
not to.
how's that working? That is a weird thing. Like I
Yeah,
didn't
tell
have
me
a
about him, dude. You covered him, so go ahead.
okay. So I didn't have a problem with him. He was good with us, to be honest with you. Like he was accountable to publicly, but then like when you're picking fights with your quarterbacks at half times of games, which is what happened to Mitch Trubisky and against the Jets in week 4 of 2022, like and then all of a sudden Kenny Pickett, the very brief Kenny Pickett era begins in the second half of that game. Like it's weird. He's one of those guys where I just think I like to me, he's not a bad guy. Like AB is a bad guy. Like Antonio Brown is a bad guy. Full stop. Period. Deontay, I think that the fire that burns in him probably burns a little too. Like it, I just think that like it can be in the wrong situation. It can be toxic for those around him.
Dude,
And the way
telling
the
the Ravens
Ravens,
he wouldn't go into the game 2 weeks ago was insane.
I mean, right?
I've
No,
seen a
I
lot of
mean,
ish
but
around here. That's the one I haven't seen, and I could not fathom that Harbaugh was
right.
going to tolerate
A
that.
quitter, like I would not have fathomed him as a quitter. But look, he got traded from one of the worst teams in the league to one of the best teams in the league, and he's not being used, right? And look, I mean, I look, guys want to play. I had a long talk with a Steeler who's on injured reserve. I'm not going to name his name. This was Friday. This was last week, and he's healthy, and they haven't activated him, and he's pissed. And this is a guy that is a good soldier down the line, and he's like, "We need help in this position. I want to play. I'm not playing." Um, Deontay, much this, like these guys, all of these guys want to play. All of these guys want to play. So, but if Deontay's like, well, if I'm going to go out there and run routes and be the fifth option, I don't want to do that. Like, I'm not, it's wrong. Like this guy wasn't wasn't on a Hall of Fame track, but he was on a guy that, could have a good 10, 12-year career and finish with, I don't know, 750 catches and 80 touchdowns and a couple of Pro Bowls. And it seems like he has gone full AB in that he short circuited his career. Like it's going to be hard for me to imagine teams picking him up. after something like this. The same with the guy with the Niners. They quit in the middle of the game a couple weeks last week. So it is weird, but I think it's telling that of where he's at, that the Ravens could use more playmakers on the outside. Like I'm not like Flowers is a good player, but like you need to me like there's more meat on the bone there that Lamar had more options that would be better. And it's weird that they traded for him and then they decided almost right away that he wasn't worth it, which is kind of it's a weird thing. But it's just again, he's not a cancer in the way that AB was a cancer, but he's also not as talented as AB either, which makes the cancer more tolerable, right? So he's probably nuked his career, and it's just, I mean, as somebody who always dealings with him were always okay, that's just kind of unfortunate.
Will Graves is here. He's the Associated Press in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They're coming down from the mountain on Saturday. We're going to play some football around here and then do it again on Christmas. I hope you have a great holiday, brother. And, I love having you on the program. And maybe 3 weeks from now, they'll play again. I mean,
I
it's always good when the
it's
Steelers play
trending
the
that
Ravens,
way.
right?
It certainly seems like it's trending that way. Like they will see each other again the second week of January.
All right.
That's the way it's like
You
in
down for the
Baltimore.
game on Saturday? You coming down?
Now I'll be here and prepping for Christmas. And you mentioned it's funny the games at one, which I'm happy about on Christmas Day, but my kids are teenagers now, and sort of the magic of Christmas has waned a bit. And sometimes I make decisions about what I want to do on how much I want to hang out with them because they're not as much fun as they used to be, and I'm probably not as much fun as I used to be either, to be very, very clear. So it might be better. Hey, we wake up at 7, they open their Santa
Daddy's home
comes.
for dinner.
Right, and I make my French toast. I make this. To be fair, one of my traditions is I get some brioche bread. I make this sort of pretty good French toast. That's my thing. I'll make that at like 9. I'll leave it by 10, and then they'll have their day to play with their new stuff, and I can go to work and come home and everybody be happy.
When
That's what we want.
Wednesdays feel like Sundays, listen, I know a lot of things, and I know Mr. Rooney a little bit. I have a feeling he's going to have a nice Christmas roast for you, and
I
there's
would
going to be some
imagine.
delicious Rooney family cookies in that little tray there, and you and Charlie Batch can fight over them on Christmas Day, all right?
Maybe Taylor Swift will stop by too. In the media
Oh, I
just.
forgot Tay Tay. She's not going to have a Christmas without Travis. So yeah, okay, I like that. Taylor in Pittsburgh for the holidays, but in the meantime, it's Ravens and Steelers in a slobber knocker here on Saturday night. You can check out Will Graves' work. He's AP Will Graves. You can find him out on social media as well as at the Associated Press in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Stay healthy through the holidays. I am Nestor. We're moving the Maryland Crab Cake Tour into 2025 already. On the 7th, we were going to be at Lib's Grill up in Bel Air for the playoffs. One thing I do know, both of these teams are going to make the playoffs. So the nervousness of all of this is more about where the game's going to be in January. I'm Nestor. He's Will. Luke's got you covered on the tech service as well. All that brought to you by our friends at Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.